Hello, Bobby Torres of Frightbox recording here to share with you 3 secrets to mixing pro-level metal drum tracks even when working with home-produced tracks. Now, it's no secret. You can achieve 100% professional sounding results even when working out of your home or project studio. The question is, how are some people able to pull this off while others struggle endlessly? The truth is, it all comes down to your approach and how you meld your tracks together within your DAW. And in today's video, we're gonna be talking about drum tracks, more specifically, metal drum tracks. So the audio sample that I'm about to play in this tutorial was recorded in my budget project studio, no acoustic treatment, no fancy microphones, and all of the tracks were recorded straight into my inexpensive USB interface. So with that being said, let's listen to the drum tracks, and then I'm gonna dive deep and share with you the 3 secrets to making these drum tracks sound professional within this mix, or any mix for that matter. Let's check out the drums. So as you can hear, that's a warm, natural, crisp drum mix that's metal, yet still sounds very analog and natural. And again, remember, these drums were recorded in a basic budget project studio, straight into a cheapo USB interface. No external preamps, no external analog hardware, nothing. Now, on top of that, the drum samples that I am blending in with the kit are 100% raw and were recorded by me on the actual tracking day. So in other words, the drum samples that you hear that are reinforcing the kit were recorded through the exact same USB interface, 100% raw. So not even the drum samples were recorded in a professional studio. So with that being said, let's talk about the 3 techniques that I'm utilizing to make this drum mix work. And technique number 1 that I'm using and that I use in pretty much all of my mixes is that I treat my DAW as if it were an analog console, especially the drum tracks. Now, like I said, these drums are recorded straight into a USB interface, which is what most of us are doing these days when recording drums out of our project studio. And the problem with this is that you'll end up with really, really sterile sounding drum tracks because interfaces are often way too clean. There's just no mojo, no harmonics, just very flat, sterile sounding source tracks. And because of that, you're gonna have to intentionally inject that analog vibe and color into your DAW via plugins. And my favorite way of adding vibe and character into a mix in an organic way is by using console emulation. Now, a tool that I often reach for gluing my drum mix together, and also what's making this particular drum mix tick, is the Slate Digital Virtual Mix Rack that comes with my subscription to the Slate Digital All Access Pass. Now, if you're familiar with this channel or any of my other videos, you know by now that I'm a huge fan of simplicity. I don't like having a million plugins in my insert chain. I like to dial in results quick, and I often don't like to overthink the mix moves that I make. Now, what I love about the Slate Digital Virtual Mix Rack is that I have all of the tools that I need right here within one instance of the plugin. Now, I'm using the Virtual Mix Rack on every single one of my individual drum tracks. And the reason why I'm doing this is A, I'm trying to keep my mix nice and simple, just as if I were mixing on an analog console. And also the fact that I'm using console emulation on each of the individual tracks is melding my drum sound together because they're all being unified by a similar color of saturation. Now, what's great about this is that all of my EQ, compression, and console emulation is happening within one single instance per track of the Slate Virtual Mix Rack. So with that being said, let's dive in and take a listen to what the drums sound like raw at the source without the console emulation and analog style EQ and compression that I have on each of the individual drum tracks. Let's check it out. So as you can hear, pretty lackluster, murky, dull, like a typical home recorded drum sound. And now I'm going to re-engage the single instance that I have on each of my individual drum tracks, just so you can hear how drastic of an effect this one instance of this plugin has on my drum mix. As you can hear, a night and day difference simply by treating my DAW as if it were an analog console. And the exact console emulation that I'm using for this drum mix is the VCC channel set to the Brit 4K-E setting, again across all of my drum tracks, which is giving them that unified sound. Now when it comes to plugins, I just want to say this. I'm a huge fan of minimalism and keeping my rig and my DAW nice, lean, and simple. And also affordable. I don't like spending a ton of money on plugins and then having to pay even more money when I have to upgrade my plugins. And that's what makes the Slate Digital All Access Pass, in my opinion, an insane value. For an affordable monthly or annual fee, you get over 75 plugins, different mix templates, tutorials, as well as custom samples that you could download. Now for me, not only is the All Access Pass extremely valuable for the analog style plugins that I get, also the utility style plugins that come with the Kilohertz bundle that's part of the Slate Digital All Access Pass. So obviously I have the virtual mix rack on all of my individual drum tracks, but on some of the drum tracks, I'm also using some of these utility style plugins, again, from the Kilohertz bundle, just to add that extra bit of detail that I'm looking for. So for example, I'm using a transient shaper on my snare, and I'm using a simple utility style high pass filter across all of my cymbal tracks, in addition to what I have going on in the virtual mix rack. Because all of these plugins are included in the Slate Digital All Access Pass, I can use my exact same plugin settings and plugin chains in Logic, Reaper, and Pro Tools, so I'm no longer tied to a single DAW. My subscription is always up to date. I get all the new plugins that are added as well as upgrades, which makes my life super simple as a producer, which I love. If you're looking for all the plugins you'll ever need without breaking the bank, I highly recommend the Slate Digital All Access Pass. I'll leave a link below in this video's description where you can check it out. So with that being said, let's dive into technique number 2 for helping to achieve a professional sounding metal drum mix within your DAW, even when working with home produced tracks. And that technique is to use parallel compression and analog style summing on your drum bus. Now, the reason why this is important is it glues your drums together as a whole, in addition to the processing that you have on your individual drum tracks. In other words, it takes all of your drums from sounding overly separate and makes them sound like a unified instrument. So if you look here, I have most of my drums, all of my shells minus my cymbals and my rooms, being sent to a drums submix right here. Now up first, I'm doing a little bit of EQ globally to my kick, snares, and toms, just cutting a little bit of mid-range with the Kilohertz 3-band EQ, but the heavy lifting is happening here in the Slate Virtual Mix Rack. Now within this one instance of this plugin, I have a little bit of console emulation, some compression that's in parallel, and EQ. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna bypass the Virtual Mix Rack, and then I will re-engage it so you can hear how this effects chain is affecting my drum sound as a whole. So as you can hear with the virtual mix rack engaged, it's a little more exciting, a little more glued together, and just a little more polished sounding. So I'm using the New York plugin from the Virtual Tube Collection, which is sort of acting as like a tube analog summing mixer in a way, just adding some nice analog color. And then I'm slamming the drums with compression, in this case, the FG116 Vintage. But here's the trick. I only have the compressor set to around 25% wet. So what you're mainly hearing is the uncompressed drum sound, but with a little bit of the super compressed sound blended in. And again, I absolutely love simplicity, and I'm doing this all within one instance without having to use any sends. I'm doing all of my compression right here within this one particular compressor. And then finally, I'm polishing off the drums with a little bit of EQ, pulling out some lower mids at around 220 Hertz, and boosting a little bit at around 5.5K by about 1 dB. And I'm using the analog style EQ, the FGN. Again, all within a single instance of the Slate Virtual Mix Rack, and all of these plugins are included in in the all-access pass. And that's tip number 2. You're gonna wanna add a little bit of saturation, compression, or parallel compression to your drum submix to glue your drums together even further. As you can hear, it took an already decent drum mix and took it to the next level. So finally, tip number 3 is one that I see a lot of new producers skipping over, and I think it's a mistake. And that is using one reverb to further glue the sound of your drum kit together. Now, the curse of plugins is you can go in there and add 50 million different plugins in your DAW, and more is not always more. In my opinion, less is often more. And the good thing about using one reverb for all of your drum tracks, or at least one main reverb for the bulk of your drum sound, is that, again, it helps glue the sound of your drum together because you're putting them together within one virtual space. Now in this mix, I'm using yet another plugin from the All Access bundle called the Verb Suite Classics, and I have it set to a nonlinear 80s style reverb just to add extra power to my drum sound. And the way I'm doing this is really simple. I'm sending a little bit of certain elements of my kit to this one instance of this reverb plugin. So I'm sending a little bit of my snare sample to it, my live snare, my snare bottom track, as well as both of my tom tracks. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna play the drum mix back, and I'm gonna intermittently bypass the reverb send so you can hear just how much vibe and glue this one instance of this one reverb plugin is adding to my entire drum sound. Let's check it out. And again, that's only one instance of one reverb plugin, and I'm sending a little bit of signal from specific individual drum tracks to that one plugin. What I see a lot of people doing, especially when starting out, is they'll stick individual reverb plugins on their individual drums. Not only does this eat up more CPU, but it can make your drums sound disjointed if you're not using the exact same settings across all of your drums. Just set up one reverb plugin on a send and mix as if you're mixing on an analog console, which is the theme of today's video. So there you have it. Those are my 3 tips for producing pro-level metal drum tracks, even when mixing home-produced drum tracks. Now I'm curious to know, are you utilizing all 3 of these mixing techniques within your own drum mixing workflow? Or are you maybe missing 1, 2, or all 3 of them? Let me know by leaving a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your opinion. Now, when it comes to achieving a pro-level mix in your home studio, so much of it comes down to how well you understand basic EQ and compression. And because of this, I'm offering you direct access for absolutely free right now to my crisp and clear Heavy Mix Formula. The Heavy Mix Formula is comprised of 3 primary components: a simple PDF guide that has all of my starting points for both EQ and compression for all of the main instruments within a heavy production, as well as private mixing tutorials that accompany each section of the PDF guide. And each mixing tutorial comes with a multi-track download, so you can download the exact same files that I'm mixing and mix along with me and practice your mixing chops. Again, the crisp and clear Heavy Mix Formula is absolutely free right now, and you can have direct access by clicking the link below in this video's description. And again, if you're looking to have every single plugin that you'll ever need at an affordable rate, definitely check out the Slate Digital All Access Pass. There's a link below in this video's description as well. If you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And be sure to click the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload one of my weekly videos on all things metal and rock production. Until next time, happy mixing.